I took a deep dive into the origins of religion, and I found out that many of our modern beliefs are rooted in ancient practices. So today, we'll be tracing those ancient practices through the years to find out how and why they evolved. I'll be highlighting some fascinating things that I discovered during the way, and focusing on key moments that I think really matter. At the end of the video, I'll be discussing questions that I kept on thinking about and possible answers. So I'm really curious what your thoughts will be on those. Alright, let's go dive in. We're going all the way back to the Paleolithic era, spanning from about 2.5 million years ago all the way up to 10,000 BCE. In this age, we find the earliest forms of religious expression in human history. One thing to note about this period, since it predates written documents, it's called prehistory. A lot of these ancient practices and beliefs are inferred from archaeological findings, and many of them are still topics of debate. Two concepts that are really important to understand early human spirituality are animism and totemism. Animism is the belief that natural objects, animals, and even landscapes possess spirits. It wasn't a religion, but more of a belief system where everything in nature is imbued with spiritual essence. Totemism, on the other hand, involves the special relationship between humans and animals. Early humans might have seen animals as spirit guides or intermediaries between themselves and the divine. This belief would have led certain animals to become sacred symbols. You can see evidence of their reverence for these animals in cave paintings in some archaeological sites, such as the caves of Lascaux, Altamira, and Chauveau. The art is located really deep in cave systems that are far from natural light and are also treacherous to get to. This suggests that the art was created in sacred spaces. Common thoughts on why these were painted that way might have been that they were part of hunting rituals or sympathetic magic, where they thought that by painting these animals and giving them such significance, it would increase the success of their future hunts. In some caves, archaeologists even found evidence of rituals, like remnants of fire or offerings. This further backs up the claim that these paintings were not just meaningless decorations, but used for some ceremonies or spiritual practices. Besides cave paintings, we can see that burial practices provide us insights into their spiritual beliefs as well. Archaeologists have found many sites spread out over thousands of years and vast geographical distances, burying their dead using the same practice of staining their bodies with red ochre. Ochre symbolizes blood and life, and was used in rituals that likely reflected beliefs about the afterlife or cultural practices about death. More evidence of identical symbolic behavior are that a lot of the burials are found being oriented towards the sunrise, symbolizing a rebirth. One of the most fascinating things that I learned about this period of time is that Neanderthals also engaged in intentional burials, sometimes burying their dead in a bed of flowers and also using red ochre. To think about the implications of Neanderthals having a belief system of the afterlife, even though they're a completely different species than humans and Homo sapiens, is pretty wild. Animism, totemism, and these early ritual practices are the foundations of our ancestors' beliefs. I find it really interesting how their spirituality clearly coincided with their understanding of nature and the world around them. Now let's take these foundational beliefs and see how they evolved as we move forward in time. One of the first major transitions in human history happened around 9700 BCE, marking the end of the Ice Age and the transition from the Paleolithic to the Mesolithic. As humans moved from nomadic lifestyles to more settled lifestyles, the agricultural revolution took place. With the advent of farming, societies became increasingly dependent on the success of their crops and the fertility of their land. Not only that, but they had to shift their way of thinking to be able to plan and precisely calculate complex activities months in advance. This shift led to the personification of natural elements like the rain, soil, and sun into fertility gods and agricultural deities. These deities were believed to directly influence food production, survival, and prosperity. The Natufians are a fascinating culture that lived between 2500 and 9500 BCE in the Levant region during the Mesolithic period. They were among the first to settle in more permanent communities. Although they still hunted wild animals and gathered wild plants, there is evidence showing that they harvested and processed wild grains such as wheat and barley. They developed tools like sickles and grinding stones to process grain, which laid the foundation for the agricultural revolution in the Neolithic period that would follow. One notable find from the Natufians is the shaman burial, where a woman was buried with animal bones and tools. This shows an evolution in burial practices over time. To include tools and animal bones shows that they are buried with things that really matter to them. The Natufians were one of the first civilizations to domesticate dogs. This laid the groundwork to domesticate other species as well. Another amazing find in many civilizations during this time are that of female figurines, often referred to as Venus figurines. This is an important discovery that emphasizes the importance of fertility, not only in crops, but in the women who carry on the human species as well. These figurines, with their exaggerated features, symbolize the nurturing aspects of women, as well as their central role in reproduction. From 9700 BC to 3300 BC, we have transitioned from the Mesolithic to the Neolithic, all the way to the end of the Copper Age. Now we're going to transition to the Bronze Age, which spans from 3300 BC to 1000 BC. In the Bronze Age, we see the emergence of more structured polytheistic religions within societies in Sumer, Canaan, and Egypt. Here, fertility symbols that we saw during the agricultural revolution have evolved into more defined agricultural deities that were worshipped for multiple reasons. For example, the Sumerian goddess Inanna or Canaanite deities like Baal were created and worshipped for fertility, divine law, and political power. In Mesopotamia, Anu was worshipped as the supreme sky god, while Ra in Egypt represented the sun and creation. These deities were not only central to spiritual life, but also became intertwined with political power and governance. The role of priesthoods became increasingly significant in these early civilizations. Priests mediated between the divine and human worlds, overseeing rituals and managing temples. This development highlights the growing complexity of religious systems and integration with societal structures. As you can see across these early societies, common themes emerged: the importance of fertility in agriculture, the establishment of cosmic order and kingship, and especially the role of priests as intermediaries. From the end of the Ice Age to the rise of complex cultures, the evolution of religious complexity mirrors humanity's journey from nomadic survival to sophisticated settled civilizations. So far, I hope you've been able to see the threads through time and the evolution of beliefs through the ages. The reverence of game from totemism became a reverence for the domesticated animals during the agricultural revolution. The animism of the Paleolithic landscapes became agricultural deities, which then transformed into complex gods worshipped for many reasons. As the foundations of religious beliefs from the previous ages became more complex, so did the evolutions of the religions themselves. For the next part, I want to focus on the symbolic archetypes that can be found throughout these ancient beliefs and link them to our modern systems. These archetypes are fundamental truths about the world that our ancient ancestors constructed their beliefs and stories around. Within the lens of these archetypes, there are some striking similarities between cultures separated by centuries. Just like the red ochre being used for the same purpose from different cultures across lands and ages, I believe the similarities between complex religious rituals and stories over time are the result of utilizing these universal archetypes. As our knowledge of the world around us grew, we just found more of these natural truths, and we needed to create stories and evolve our religions to help the populations better understand them and pass them down through the generations. 3 of the most ancient archetypes that we've already seen so far are sacrifice, rebirth, and fertility. Sacrifice, often represented with blood, has been used countless times. The prehistoric hunters saw blood every kill that they made. It was a symbol of success, of sustaining another day. They saw the delicate balance of life and death every time they saw blood, and began using red ochre to mark the bodies of their dead. further symbolizing this. The roots of importance of this hunt and the blood that came with it can be seen all throughout history. We see it with the human sacrifices in Aztec temples or the animal sacrifices in Hebrew temples. Of course, in modern day, we see this sacrifice in Christianity every time one goes to church, drinking the blood of Jesus in the form of wine. The archetype of sacrifice has many different expressions, but always has the same underlying meaning. Rebirth has been a symbol representing renewal and new beginnings. Early humans buried their dead orienting towards the sun, believing in an afterlife or the possibility of returning to life in some form. This concept of rebirth persisted across ancient civilizations, such as in Egyptian mythology, where Osiris's resurrection was central to their belief in the afterlife. The myth of Persephone in Greek mythology also embodies rebirth, as her return from the underworld each spring represents the renewal of life and the cycle of seasons. We again see rebirth in modern times with Christianity, where the resurrection of Christ symbolizes both spiritual rebirth and the promise of eternal life. The idea of spiritual rebirth has transcended religion today. People seek personal reinvention through therapy, self-help books, or other measures. Whether through spiritual or personal growth, the archetype of rebirth continues to represent the possibility of renewal and transformation in our lives. Fertility has long symbolized life, abundance, and creation. Prehistoric artifacts like the Venus figurines showcase early humanity's reverence for the life-giving power of women. All through the ages, the theme of fertility continued to flourish. Mesopotamian deities like Inanna were worshipped as powerful symbols of fertility, love, and the cycles of life. Demeter, the Greek goddess of agriculture, personified the earth's fertility and the renewal of crops each year. In modern times, the fertility archetype is reflected in cultural celebrations like Thanksgiving, which has roots in agricultural harvest festivals, as well as spring festivals around the world that celebrate abundance and growth. Outside of traditional religions, deities such as Gaia and Mother Earth are still relevant in spiritual people today, as well as holidays such as Mother's Day. There are many more archetypes such as these. They are the reason why so many of our modern beliefs and traditions can be traced back to prehistory. Carl Jung was the first to identify these archetypes. He called it the collective unconscious. If you're curious about what the other archetypes are, I'll post them on the screen. According to Jung, the collective unconscious is a part of the unconscious mind that is universal, containing knowledge and memories inherited from our ancestors. It is shared among all people and exists independent of personal experiences, passed down through the generations. These are primordial images or symbols that represent universal themes and motifs in human experience. A pattern that I've seen in my research ties closely to a term that I kept on reading in my book called Hominization, or the process of becoming more human. I couldn't help but take the idea and stretch it out over time. From the very beginning of our ancestors waking up from their evolutionary slumber towards more complex consciousness, they used the world around them and their knowledge to create stories that made sense to them. As our consciousness expanded and our worldview grew, our spiritual needs grew in tandem. As we go through the ages, we add more complexities to the mix, like politics, morality, and reason. It is because of these that we have the religions and beliefs today. In each step of human evolution, religion served as the spiritual backbone to reassure us that what we saw in the world around us was understood from a spiritual perspective inside of us. It helps fulfill the human need to understand meaning, morality, connection, and transcendence in our lives. I believe in today's world, there is a growing number of people becoming agnostic or atheist. They are adopting the religion of science. I think this is because our world is changing and our technology is advancing so fast that there's an imbalance between what our eyes are seeing and the spiritual need to understand that. A lot of people are just left without answers to their questions. We know more today than ever before. We are literally connected globally. As we've seen all throughout history, with the growth of our knowledge came a growth of religion and spirituality alongside of it. The spiritual gap that science and logic are leaving in their wake are very apparent. However, I think it's important to realize that no matter what you do or don't believe in, humans always pull from these universal archetypes in order to fulfill a spiritual necessity, whether they realize it or not. Let me know what your thoughts are on all of this. I'm really curious what you think. I'm sure that there's a lot of stuff out there that I missed, but I'm hoping that I kind of got the general outline right. I like the idea of these archetypes being an answer to the questions I was having about why there were so many similarities. What are your thoughts on that? I'm so fascinated by so much of this, and like I said, I feel like there's so much that I left out or maybe I didn't get to. So I'm definitely going to keep on researching this, and if there's anything that you think is super interesting that I should know about, please leave a comment below. I'm planning on reading this Immortality Key next. It's about the Eleusinian Mysteries. I keep on listening to podcasts where they bring this up, and it just sounds so cool, so I can't wait. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive today. If you like these videos, I plan on making a lot more on some different topics. It's just kind of what I enjoy doing, and I hope to get better over time. So thanks, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.